the Zodiac Killer, a name that still sends chill down spines. If you're a fan of true crime or just love a good thriller, then you have probably heard of the Zodiac Killer.
This morning.
Are you planning to poke?
We should have a drink.
An unidentified killer with 37 murders. That's what he claimed. But how much of the movie was true? Who was the Zodiac Killer? And why was he never caught? In this video, we'll break down the real story behind one of America's most infamous unsolved cases, exploring the murders, the cryptic letters, and the obsessive manhunt that inspired the film. So smash that like button and subscribe, and let's start the video.
Ravenwood had always been a quiet place, nestled in the heart of a dense forest. Life moved slowly here, with days marked by the ringing of the church bell and nights by the howling of wolves. But everything changed when the old mansion on the hill was sold. When the Ravenwood mansion was sold and no one knew who bought it, a young woman, Sarah, was the first to notice the changes. She had always been drawn to the mansion, and she decided to uncover the secrets of the mansion. If you are enjoying this snippet of our Ravenwood Haunting ebook, you can check it out by clicking the first link in the description or the pinned comment. Use code MYSTERY01 to get a special discount.
I certainly wouldn't tell you.
Are you sure there's nobody else in the house?
Zodiac is a 2007 movie, which is based on a serial killer who sets out on a killing spree.
I've walked it.
The movie has a stacked cast with Robert Downey Jr., Jake Gyllenhaal, and Mark Ruffalo as the lead actors of the film.
Fantastic.
The real Zodiac story begins with two Lompoc High School seniors, fiancés Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards, while sunbathing on a beach near Gaviota State Park during their senior ditch day in June 1963. The two were bound with rope and were shot 11 and 9 times respectively. Their bodies were dragged to a nearby shack where Robert's father found them soon after. Similarly, in October 1966, Cherie Bates left her father a note to say she'd gone to the Riverside City College library only for her Volkswagen Beetle to be found abandoned there the next day, and her stabbed corpse left between 2 nearby houses. The local paper received a typed confession from the supposed killer 1 month later, and the following year, the newspaper, police, and Bates's father all received similar handwritten letters signed Z. These events wouldn't be linked to the Zodiac Killer until years later. The story continues with more high schoolers, Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, whose first date took place in December 1968. According to passing motorists, they were parked at a lover's lane in Benicia before Jensen was found shot in her back in the front seat, and Faraday shot in the head outside the vehicle. In Vallejo the following year, married mother Darlene Farine parked in another lover's lane with Michael Mago. They were approached by a stranger who shot them both. Farine died of her injuries, but Mago survived. The killing of Darlene Farine is where David Fincher's Zodiac begins its story.
What are you wearing?
I'm cold.
You're cold on the 4th of July.
On July 31st, 1969, 3 letters were posted to the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the San Francisco Examiner, respectively. These were mostly identical, detailing the weapons and ammunition used in the murders. They stated, "I like killing because it's so much fun," and threatened to kill again if the publications refused to publish his attached cipher. Another letter was sent to the Examiner 5 days later, teasing the police for failing to solve the cipher. "When they do crack it, they will have me." This letter features the first use of the name the Zodiac. San Francisco Chronicle published their cipher, but it didn't stop the killing. The following September, college students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were both stabbed by a man wearing a hooded costume and the Zodiac symbol. Shepard died of her wounds, but Hartnell survived. 1 month later, 28-year-old cab driver Paul Stein was shot in the head and had a piece of his shirt removed. SFPD's Dave Toschi investigated the scene and would soon become the inspector most famously related to the case. Toschi considered Stein's death part of a routine robbery until the killer sent a letter to the San Francisco Chronicle that included the missing piece of Stein's blood-stained shirt to prove his legitimacy. The Chronicle soon became the Zodiac's primary correspondence for publication, sending them 2 more letters that year. The letters included ciphers and accounts of the police nearly catching him, but ignorantly letting him go. They would go on to receive several more letters from the Zodiac throughout 1970, some denying involvement in recent crimes, others claiming responsibility. Enjoying the fame Avery's articles provided him, the Zodiac demanded in April 1970 that the people of San Francisco's Bay Area wear Zodiac buttons featuring his symbol. In July 1970, he complained about the lack of Zodiac buttons being worn. The Chronicle decided against publishing a few Zodiac letters at this time, with Avery controlling the narrative himself. As a result, the killer likely became frustrated and began targeting Avery personally. 1 year after receiving Paul Stein's bloody clothing in the mail, Avery received a Halloween card that read, "From your secret pal, Peekaboo, you are doomed," and the number 14, implying either the Zodiac had claimed an unidentified 14th victim, or that it could be Avery himself. The Zodiac killings seemed to stop in the following years. This was seemingly contradicted by a letter to the Albany Times-Union in August 1973 that stated where and when he would kill again. The police failed to identify any murders from that date to relate to the Zodiac, and handwriting experts were unable to verify whether it was even written by the same person. Another letter to the Chronicle in 1974 stated, "Me 37, SFPD 0 inches," implying the killer had claimed 37 victims by then and was still at large. Ultimately, the Zodiac's identity remained a mystery, with Toschi convinced it was Arthur Lee Allen, a teacher and child molester who had served 3 years in a mental hospital. Unfortunately for Toschi, though, Allen's fingerprints and handwriting didn't match the killer's, and he passed a polygraph test that Allen said went on for 10 hours. Police quietly reopened the case in 1991. 1969's Zodiac survivor, Michael Mageau, identified Allen from a mugshot in 1991.
It's him.
But the Vallejo Police Department deemed this to be invalid since, by his own admission, Mageau never got a good look at the gunman at the time. Allen died in 1992. Robert Graysmith would go on to write the book that Fincher's movie was based on, both of which attempt to provide some closure by surmising that Allen was the Zodiac, but that he died before the police could question him again after Mageau's supposedly valid statement. The Zodiac film didn't do good in box office and was a theatrical flop, but that fact would shock some fans today because they think it is a masterpiece. Let's see how accurate the movie was and compare it with the real case. The movie shows Zodiac suspect Arthur Lee Allen wearing a watch that bears the killer's symbol and the brand name Zodiac. The real Arthur Lee Allen wore an identical watch, the Zodiac Seawolf watch. In the movie, we watch as Robert becomes obsessed with his amateur Zodiac investigation, which eventually results in the destruction of his marriage to Melanie. In real life, the Zodiac book took Robert 10 years to complete, and it cost him his marriage. When asked if he regrets his obsession with the Zodiac killer, Graysmith responded, "It affected my life in one bad way because I got divorced. But on the other hand, I have the greatest kids." In a separate interview, Graysmith said, "In the end, it wasn't all bad. I think had I to do it over again, I probably would do it." In the movie, a police officer spotted the Zodiac killer after the taxicab murder. That is true, the officer who was inside the police car, Don Fuch, told ABC's Primetime in 2002.
The Zodiac. This person outweighed the person that I saw that night by about 100 pounds, I would estimate, just an estimate, which took him out. His face, even though it's round, was too round. I don't recall him showing me a photograph of a profile that he says he did of Arthur Allen, but Zodiac had a widow's peak, hair coming in the center more and receding on both sides of the forehead. I don't know if that's the proper term for it, but that's what my parents used to call it. That was my impression at the time, is that it was not Lee Allen.
In the movie, Graysmith visits the home of a man who supposedly knew Zodiac suspect Rick Marshall.
The poster that Rick...
He goes there in search of film canisters that may contain Zodiac murder footage. When Graysmith is in the man's home, he asks him about the movie posters that Rick Marshall drew. The man tells Graysmith that it wasn't Marshall who drew the movie posters, it was him. He then takes Graysmith into the basement, where Graysmith hears footsteps above him.
Are you sure there's nobody else in the house?
Even though the man had told him they were alone. This is all true, and really happened to Graysmith, even the footsteps. Some investigators who have researched the case believe that this man and Rick Marshall may have been working together.
Thank you.
To this day, the Zodiac Killer has not been identified and will always remain as one of the most mysterious cases we have ever seen.
Can I help you?
No.
That is the end of the video. Comment down below if you have seen the Zodiac film, and like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.